Hello, friends, and welcome to my today's lecture, that is on the themes in William Shakespeare's comic play, A Merchant of Venice. In my earlier lectures, I had already spoken about the summary of the play in detail and act-wise. Today, I'll be explaining the various themes that are dealt with in this comic play. Now, the themes that Shakespeare deals with in this play are reality and idealism, prejudice and intolerance, human and animal, law, mercy and revenge, greed versus generosity, reading and interpretation, love and friendship, self-interest versus love, hatred as a cynical phenomenon, and many more. Now I would be discussing or explaining these themes in a little detail. Now, talking about reality and idealism, the play Merchant of Venice is structured partly on the contrast between the idealistic and realistic opinions about the society and relationships. Now, on the one hand, the play tells us that love is more important than money. Mercy is preferable to revenge, and that love lasts forever. On the other hand, more cynical voices tell us that money rules the world. Mercy alone cannot govern our lives, and that love can evaporate after marriage. The play switches between these different attitudes. Now, Shakespeare organizes the shifts between idealism and realism by associating the two concepts with the play's two locations, that is, Venice and Belmont. Now, Venice here is depicted as a city of merchants, usurers, and cynical young men. And Belmont, in contrast, is a land where fairy tales come true and romance exists. Now, talking about another theme, that is prejudice and intolerance, we find that in the play, the people of Venice, in Merchant of Venice, almost all of them express extreme intolerance of Shylock and the other Jews residing in Venice. In fact, the exclusion of these others seems to be a fundamental part of the social bonds that bind the Christians together in Venice, or Christians of Venice together. Otherwise, how it would be that the ridiculous clown Launcelot would ingratiate himself with the slave Bassanio? Or why would the sensitive Antonio tolerate someone as crass as Gratiano? That is possible to argue that Shakespeare himself shares his character's certainty that the Jews are naturally malicious and that they are inferior to the Christians because of Shylock's ultimate refusal to show any mercy at all, and as a result, the pitiful end that he meets. Yet there are also reasons to think that Shakespeare may be subtly criticizing the prejudices of his characters. Now, Shylock's fury comes not from some malicious Jewishness, but it comes as a result of the years of abuse that he has borne. Now, for example, though he's criticized by Antonio for practicing usury, that is, charging interest on the borrowed money, now Jews were actually barred from most other professions. Or in other words, we may say that the Christians basically they forced Shylock to work in such a profession which the Christians condemned as immoral. Now, Shylock insists that he had learned his hatred from the Christians. It was not that was his basic instinct, and it is Shylock alone who argues that all of the characters are the same in terms of biology and under the law. Now, if we view it this way, does the Merchant of Venice offer a critique of the same prejudices that it seemingly endorses? Now, talking about the third theme that it deals with is human and animal. We see that this theme of human and animal is very closely related to the theme of prejudice and intolerance, or the theme of humanity and the inhumanity of which various characters they accuse one another. Now, in insulting and abusing Shylock, the people of Venice frequently they denigrate him as an animal or a devil. Now, Shylock, in turn, he seeks to reduce his debtor, Antonio, to the status of an animal whose body can be bought or sold. In the courtroom scene, he justifies his purchasing of a pound of Antonio's flesh as being fundamentally similar to the way in which other Venetians might buy slaves or the livestock. Now, Shakespeare was writing The Merchant of Venice as a philosophical movement known as the Renaissance humanism, which became very prominent during that time. And this philosophy defined the human beings as somebody very exceptional ones, with existing outside of the chain of being of God's other creatures. And yet, this play shows how this type of humanism can be used to abuse the outsiders. Now, after all, if being human ceases to be based on biology, then exactly who is human and who isn't becomes a matter of interpretation. Now, the Christian characters in the play, they clearly believe that to be a Christian or being a Christian, it's a primary requirement for being human being, as both the insults were aimed at Shylock and the Prince of Morocco suggest that. Now, in his famous speech justifying his desire for revenge, in I think Act 3, scene 1 somewhere, Shylock very explicitly he rejects the humanist definition of humanity, describing his similarity to the Venetians or the people of Venice in terms of the biological functions that all human beings share. That is, tickling, eating, bleeding, dying, etc. Now, constant references are there in the play to flesh and blood, which further highlight the human's biological and animal origins. That's all for now. I'll be coming up with more themes in times to come. Till then, goodbye and thank you.